Hi, my name is Ann Brazo. I'm the CEO of MPN Advocacy and Education International. We just hosted our very first pediatric and young adult MPN program in Chicago, Illinois. And although we had some parents and young adults speak at this event, we thought it would be very advantageous to those of you out there who just recently had a child diagnosed with an MPN, or you are a young adult who was just diagnosed with an MPN. And so we are going to interview some of those parents that were here today. Thank you for being with us today, and I'm so glad that you were at the event and so glad that you were able to share your story. Can you tell us, when was the first time you heard about an MPN?
6 o'clock on a Friday night in December, when my son's doctor called and let us know that he had something called essential thrombocythemia. And I remember thinking, spell that for me. I don't even know how to spell that, much less do anything else with it. And then my second thought was, I'm not going to Google this because I don't want to know.
Okay.
And then later on, once we were sent to a doctor, I think we found out more about it. But even the doctor didn't know at that point. And this is the part where I'm going to say thank you for your site, because once we had the final diagnosis and we had the first JAK2, we heard about JAK2 for the very first time, I got in the car and I did Google for the very first time I Googled. And your site came up. And so I had sat with this pediatrician hematologist, and I had asked her, does stomach aches, nausea, leg pain, fatigue, are these all symptoms of this disease? And she said no. So I got in the car, we were driving home, my husband and I, it was Valentine's Day, 2017, and I Googled. And I remember taking a big breath before I did it. Everybody says don't do Google MD, but I did. And your site came up. And you didn't know I was going to even bring this up.
No, I didn't.
And I was able to click on symptoms. And the symptoms popped up, and there it was, nausea, leg pain. And I remember thinking, that was the very first time I thought, we need to find another doctor. And I thought, we have some answers. And so from there, I started doing additional reading, and I discovered right-click. So if you're reading a white paper and you don't understand what a term is, you can highlight it and you can right-click, and it'll say search Google or search Bing or search whatever search engine you have on your computer, and it'll bring you up the definition of what that word was. So then that's how I started to read white papers. I'd read through them. If I didn't understand a word, I'd right-click, I'd look it up. Okay, then I'd read the next section. So really, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We had heard about, we were starting to get more calls, as I said, about children and young adults. What fascinates me about you, in particular, is that you have no fear for the sake of your child, and I think it's an important quality and characteristic to have during this time, to going after the correct information and changing things if they're not right for him. So tell me about the day that you made the decision with your son not to use one of the medications, because I thought that was very intriguing at your presentation.
So we had gone to see Dr. Verstofik at MD Anderson, and he had done some research for JAK2 mutation. So this is where things get a little bit different when you have ET or PV, is you have different mutations underneath it. And with the JAK2 mutation, which my son has, there is the potential for remission using Pegasus interferon. And my husband and I had done a lot of research, and we decided to switch him. And there's a lot of work you have to go through with insurance companies, so if anybody's thinking about that, I want them to be aware of that beforehand. I wasn't. It was shocking to me, and it was a little bit frustrating. And from there, we were finally able to get the medicine, and we were told to do, is it okay for me to use the names of the medicines?
Yes, you switched him from hydroxyurea, correct?
We switched him from hydroxyurea to Pegasus interferon. The protocol is to use hydroxyurea for 2 weeks while you go switch to the Pegasus interferon. The purpose and the reasoning for that is that Pegasus interferon can take up to 3 to 4 months to work. So what does that mean? That means that more than likely your platelets will creep up in that first 3 to 4 months. By overlapping it, the goal is that the hydroxyurea stays in your blood system a little bit longer to try and maintain the lower platelet count. So in the last half of that 3 to 4 month period, you're starting at a lower number, so it's not going to increase. So we went that first week. Hydroxyurea had made my son ill. So every morning he was waking up sick to his stomach. He was just not feeling well, very tired. And after the first week, he just looked at us and he said, I'm not taking it. And one of the things I think that's frustrating for parents and for children, and I mentioned this in my presentation, was that the level of control and power you lose. My son has lost so much of his control and his power in this disease. He's lost his ability to play sports because of the acquired von Willebrand's, which he has. And they thought he had a brain bleed, so we've already gone through the MRI once, but he's lost so much. And so being able to take some of that power and control back, my husband and I stepped away for a moment. We've learned not to have some of those discussions in front of him. Although he has been in every doctor's appointment, he's been through we let him stay through all of that, because eventually he is going to have to maintain his care. And we stepped away for a moment, and we just looked at each other and we said, we're going to let him decide. And so we came back and we said, is that what you want to do? Do you want to not take the medicine and just do the shot? And he said, I'm not taking it. And we said, okay. That's not a hill we're going to fight for. That's not something we're going to do. I will say, to get him to start taking the shot, we did bribe him. So originally when he started taking the shot, I gave him $5. He didn't want to do the shot, so for every 30 seconds it took him, so he'd say, okay, do it, and then go, no. Okay, do it, no. So for every 30 seconds that he delayed, I took out $1. So the first time I think he got a shot, he got $2. But the next time he did 4, and the time after that he got 5.
What a brilliant thing to do, though. That's great. So you're a wealth of information, and you are a very solid person, and I love the way you have dealt with your son on this. And so what would you impart to wisdom you would impart to other parents if you could say boom, boom, boom? What would those 3 most important things be to another parent that may be watching this?
Very first, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think I forgot that at the beginning when I ended up with pneumonia myself because I was working during the day, reading all night, then getting up and working during the day. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. This isn't in 6 months your son is going to be better. This isn't you're going to find the cure on your own. I think as mothers, that's one of our number 1 goals, is to find something to help our child. Sure. And as part of that, find the organizations like y'all's, the MPN organizations, and find those groups where there's information. I wish I would have done a better job of narrowing in my focus, if that makes sense.
It does.
The second thing is it's a team effort. You talk about me being smart about handling my son. That's my husband. A big part of that is my husband behind me and us having those conversations. He can be a little bit more calm. He's an attorney, so he's a little bit more calm. He thinks things through. Originally, they wanted to put him on a much higher dose of hydroxyurea, and he insisted that we start out at a lower dose. So really being in that team, I think, is my number 2 point. And part of that is, I think Sylvia talked about being a familial unit.
Absolutely.
Remembering that you are a familiar, that unit is important. So we have grandparents that are involved, my parents are involved, my father-in-law is involved, and my husband and I having those conversations, and also remembering that we do have a son. Another son, our firstborn is also part of our family, and he needs our attention as much as our youngest. So I think that would be my number 2 point, is just keeping that family unit as strong as possible, and being on the same page. So my husband and I have an agreement that we don't move forward unless we're both on the same page.
That's great.
Because I think, and so my argument then is if I want to move forward on something, I need to outline it and define it for him, and he can do his own research and come back, so we don't necessarily have to make the decision in that moment, because let's make this decision and move on, and he's going research.
Yes.
So we make a good team that way. So being on the same page before we make a decision, I think, is huge. So making sure that those pieces stay into place, because if your family unit breaks apart, that's going to affect the child as much as the illness, right?
Right.
So that's probably the number 2 thing. And my number 3 thing is develop your community. We both work full time. So if he's sick, my mom can sometimes go pick him up, or my father-in-law can go pick him up, or and keeping our oldest involved in some of the decisions too, so he's aware, because at some point in time my husband and I won't necessarily be around, but our oldest will be part of his support group, so keeping him involved in it as well. Sylvia, I think, talked about a 504, having that on file with the school. I don't think we talk enough about that in our community, but it is very important for our kids, because they can have consequences at the school if they're not aware of what's going on. So that's part of that community as well.
That's such a great point, because adults with MPNs suffer, as I mentioned, you weren't in the adult session yesterday, but the fear of not getting a promotion, or the fear of telling people at work that they have something. So, there's so many components to this. So in closing this little exercise here, what would you say we need to do? We kind of know where we're going next, but what would you say we need to do as an MPN community, and from an advocacy perspective? We know we want to bring this group together and tighten it up a little more, and we do have the support of the physicians. What do you want to happen going forward with your son's diagnosis and with this community?
We can all say cure, right?
Yes,
Number 1
course.
is cure.
Sure.
So I'm going to set that one aside, because I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yes.
I think the next piece of it is sharing of information. One of the things that my son learned very quickly is he could be sick, but not really be sick. So, he learned to work the system a little bit. So I reached out to some other moms and I said, do y'all see this? And how are you handling that? And so there are times when he's gone to school and he has been sick, because to some extent I'm teaching him a lesson that when you are sick, you need to. So I think that having that community and being able to reach out to each other and ask different questions, I think having grandparents and outside community people we're part of some different Facebook groups is great. I think also, though, having other groups where we limit it to just guardians or parents would be very beneficial, just because I think sometimes you can get to more of a meat of a conversation, and I think people are much more likely to share if they know the people on the board, whereas now our Facebook group is getting so large, sometimes I don't want to say things because we don't even use my son's name.
Yes,
so
and you shouldn't probably.
Yeah, and we're very careful about what we share online. So I think having more of a closed group where we can share information, and just even today having Anne brought up the stomach issues.
Yes.
I think we can start to somewhat direct some of that research, because they rely on us to provide that information. So I think that's it. I think the other thing is not being sidelined or being surprised. I think every single one of us, the night before, the 2 days before our child has a doctor's appointment, is terrified. We're up a lot of the night, we're worried about it. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it, because you don't know what could potentially come the next day.
Right.
So making us aware a little bit, and I know when I get my son's Pegasus interferon, it's literally 100 pages. This is all the stuff that you could look for, and don't give me the 100 pages, give me the 5 bullet points. This could cause a problem with his liver. When the doctor came to me and he said, his liver has gone from 20 to 80 to 218. I'm expecting to go up next time. That could mean he can't take Pegasus interferon anymore. That blindsided me.
That's right.
So now the next time he's got a doctor's appointment, I probably will for sure be up, right? Because I don't know what's coming in that next appointment.
Right.
So I think to some extent, and I don't want to say dumbing down, but I don't know how else to say it.
Well, just making it more succinct and something that is
layman's terms.
Less cumbersome for the parents, so you can, and in layman's terms.
Right.
So it's a very brief, in layman's terms, description of what could happen or what to look for, and not a 5-page. You know, I know why they do that, but
well, and
you know,
I'm not an attorney. I
right,
get it.
Right.
You know,
right.
but at the same point, I just want to know. Hey, these are the things these are the tests that the doctors will be running on a regular basis once you go on this medicine, because they're looking for these things.
Okay.
And I don't care if it's 5 pages.
Right.
But 100, I can't.
Yeah,
handle.
that's a bit much.
Yeah.